Marhaban wa assalamu alaikum. Welcome and peace be upon you. I'm Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And this is the 905er podcast. Some listeners will know that the words I just began the podcast with are in Arabic and are spoken millions, perhaps billions of times a day around the world. At home, when welcoming guests, with friends, and at the places of worship of multiple religions, welcome and peace be upon you. The first words you learn, if you learn anything about Arabic, are the words for providing hospitality, for providing welcome, delivered with a courteousness that by Western standards can seem old-fashioned, and wishing your guest to live in peace. The exact same phrase exists in Hebrew, shalom aleikum, and is spoken in similar or derivative forms across the languages and dialects of North Africa, the Levant, Arabia, and Asia as far as China, where it's spoken by the Uyghurs. These are just some simple facts. I'm not claiming to tell you anything profound about the culture of the Middle East or Asia, but for far too many of us, even these most basic facts about the background of some of the different cultures that today make up the people of Canada would be completely unknown. Nobody learns about this stuff, about the different cultures of Canada. Nobody really cares most of the time. And so we remain pretty ignorant of many of our fellow Canadians. And in that vacuum that ignorance creates, hate grows. A few hours ago, a man in London, Ontario, chose to drive a truck into a family of 5 waiting at a crosswalk. 4 were killed. 1 child was seriously injured but has survived. London is outside the GTA, outside the 905, but it's very much a city like ours, wherever we might live in Ontario. This family was cut down on Main Street, Canada in 2021. The hate that makes someone carry out such a horrendous act can only be born out of ignorance, and a profound desire to stay ignorant, a profound desire to listen only to the most hateful and distorted lies and ignore the fact that they make no sense. The killer didn't know this family, didn't want to know them, because if he did, he would have been forced to realise they were humans just like him. Better humans than him, not driven by hatred. Humans just trying to live in peace, humans who would have welcomed him to their home, given the chance, and would have wished that peace be upon him. It's the same refusal to recognise the humanity of others that drives anti-Semitism and fueled the Holocaust, that drives racism, that lets one man suffocate another with his knee on his neck in the name of keeping the peace, that lets priests and nuns starve, abuse and murder First Nations children, and then bury them secretly in mass graves for 100 years, with the apathetic approval of Canadian voters. It's been a dark month in a dark year in a dark decade of Canadian history. We need to do better. We need to start driving the ignorance out of the minds of Canadians who are fueled by hate. We need to educate ourselves better. We need to get to know our fellow Canadians better, especially if they are different from us, especially if they attend a mosque or a synagogue or a gurdwara or a church that is unfamiliar to us, especially if they can speak a different language or if they look different, especially if their ancestors lived in these lands before our ancestors did or even knew that it existed. And when we do, we'll find, every single time, that our neighbours are just regular human beings trying to get by, just like us. Our guest this week is Graham Crawford, one of the leads and spokespeople of iElectHamilton, which was launched 2 weeks ago. In 2 short weeks, iElectHamilton has provoked a wave of positive support from many Hamiltonians and a storm of angry reaction from some of the city's political grandees, who dislike its agenda of seeking a better council for Hamilton. It's already been described as a leftist takeover by university elites, and it's been attacked for being negative and unfairly hostile to incumbent councillors, just trying to do a decent job. If true, it must be said Graham Crawford has taken an unusual route to being a leftist revolutionary. Born in Hamilton, he co-owned a management consulting firm in Toronto for 25 years, before selling the business and retiring back to Hamilton in 2005. He considers himself to be a critical optimist. We spoke to Graham for our usual 30-odd minutes, and then we spoke a bit longer. And then we spoke some more, and we ended up with quite enough conversation to make 2 good episodes. So that's exactly what we're going to give you. So settle down for part 1 of our conversation with Graham, as we look at Hamilton's political problems and what iElectHamilton suggests is the answer for a better city. Please don't forget to share and review the 905er podcast wherever you get it. If you'd like to be part of the 905er journey and to help us grow into a valued voice for our region, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/the905er. That's patreon.com, THE905ER. Thanks very much.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank Graham Crawford, who is one of the organizers of iElectHamilton, for coming on the 905er today. Thank you, Graham, for taking the time from your schedule to come on and answer some of our questions about this unique municipal endeavor for Hamilton.
Well, thank you, and thank you both for inviting me on. I'm a fan. I'm a regular listener, so it's nice to be a guest.
Long time listener, first time caller.
Exactly right. Hello, Larry. Yes. Right.
So you know what? Because some of our listeners probably aren't. They're not all exclusively Hamiltonians, and even those who live in Hamilton might not know what iElectHamilton is. Can you give us just a brief summary of what iElectHamilton is, and how did this originate from you?
Sure. So let's first of all, what it is. It's a group of it's a grassroots organization, diverse group of Hamiltonians who are dissatisfied with the decisions and behaviors and actions of our current council, and so we actually grew out of a common sort of unhappiness. I wrote an op-ed in the Spectator, December of 2019, that was about civic sadness. And it was after the Sewergate scandal, then the Red Hill Valley scandal came out. There was violence at Pride, and our council reacted, in my opinion, very badly to that. Anyway, a friend reached out, said, let's have coffee. I read your op-ed. Then that led to, we got to do something. And literally 30 days later, we had our first meeting. We each invited, the two of us invited 12 people. 24 people showed up. iElect grew out of that. It was a face-to-face meeting. So this is pre-COVID, but only barely, as it turns out. And we had a second meeting. So we've only had 2 face-to-face meetings. But our goal is, our tagline is new leadership for a better Hamilton. And iElect stands for 6 priorities that we are focusing on, that all municipalities really across the country focus on. So just very quickly, it's infrastructure, economy, leadership, environment, community, transportation. The first letter of those spells iElect.
Well, I think it's interesting. You said that you guys started meeting back in 2019 or thereabouts, correct?
Yeah, first coffee was 2019. First face-to-face group meeting was January 2020.
So this isn't like a last weekend you guys had this idea to
No.
do this. This has been brewing for some time. I guess with the let's use a polite term, discontentment with the current Hamilton City Council.
Yeah, definitely. That's it was a common catalyst, actually. We all agreed, and it's grown since then, because we just launched less than 2 weeks ago, 11 days ago, I think.
Immediately you did launch. One of the older leaders of Hamilton waded in and well, it's been giving you some free publicity, I think, to be honest.
Exactly.
Larry
Exactly,
Deani.
Keep talking it up, Larry.
Yeah. Said a bunch of kind of fairly inflammatory things. I noticed he's been doing it again today, actually. Sort of accusing. Well, let's start off with the most ludicrous point, which we actually mentioned on the podcast a week or so ago.
Yes, you did. I heard that, actually.
Yeah, that there's kind of this, that basically you're a leftist plot to overtake Hamilton Council now. I feel almost stupid asking you to address that point, but do you want to address that point?
Yes. Speak to my lawyer. No, indeed. Larry, in his constant search for relevance, felt he had to say something. So he has. But, it's what Larry does, and that's fine. We are a group of diverse people. People have assumed that we have a party affiliation. We don't. People have said, "Oh, you're putting a slate of candidates together." We're not. They've said you're going to endorse candidates. We're not. You're going to fund candidates through your fundraising. We're not. So no slate, no funding of candidates, and no party affiliation. I mean, it's a no to everything they claim. But this is the age, as you know, of misrepresentation, of false facts. And it's just trying to goad us into saying something. And we're not biting. We're all too smart for that. All of us, not just a few of us.
Well, there's a lot to unpack in that statement, Graham. And first thing that comes to mind is, how are you guys going to function in the next municipal election? Because you just said you actually eliminated like 3 of my next questions in that statement.
Sorry about that.
No, that's great. It's easy for me. So like you're not endorsing anyone. You're not going to put forward a slate of candidates across the wards. What exactly do you envision your role being in the next municipal election?
Sure. Well, because we have identified the 6 priorities that municipalities spend a lot of money on and residents care a lot about, and because our tagline is New Leadership for a Better Hamilton, there's two major concepts in that tagline. New leadership, we want to see faces change around the council table. As you know, we have a councillor who's been there. By the time the next election happens, he will be celebrating finishing his 34th year. That's 34 years in that seat. We have others who are 25 years. We have others who are 18 years. We think it's time for new leadership. And the reason we do is because we're also looking at how do we define a better Hamilton? Status quo isn't good enough. Someone wisely said that we are managing Hamilton's decline. That's what council does, our current council. And unfortunately, a lot of us agree. They're managing our decline instead of building a fabulous, ambitious, glorious 10th largest city in the country, which we absolutely have the capacity to be. But not if you keep making bad decisions. Not if you keep running away from the tough ones.
We spoke to Laura Babcock a couple of weeks ago, more specifically about the LRT announcement, and she mentioned something that directly paralleled something that you said in your kind of opening statement there, which was you mentioned this concept of civic sadness, and she said, Hamilton is like a city with a broken heart. I'm not sure that I've ever heard phrases like that used before in a kind of municipal civic environment, but it absolutely, to me, kind of hits the nail on the head that it's this, the people who have been in positions of influence for a very long time seem to want to say, no, don't hope for better. If you hope for better, you're an idiot. Hope for, this is as good as it's going to get, guys. And I don't know, maybe you could just expand a bit more on that kind of idea of civic sadness that you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, the civic sadness comes from expecting so much more out of your leaders, and they disappoint you seemingly at every turn. I mean, we're talking about major scandals here. This is not just I wish my road was repaved or my blue box was broken and it took 6 weeks to get a new one. We're talking about 24 billion liters of sewage that was leaked into Cootes Paradise because a gate was open on our water containment facility. We have an independent inquiry into the paving of the Red Hill Valley Parkway, which is a highway, because there's concerns that the pavement was improperly spec'd and that accidents have happened. Some have resulted in death, others major catastrophic accidents. Those are just 2 examples, but those are major examples that will ultimately cost the city of Hamilton. I mean, no one knows for sure, but we're talking many tens of millions of dollars in fines and probably lawsuits. Who made those decisions? The Red Hill Valley paving scandal, that report was available, but was hidden by our council. We know it was. I'm not making this up. We know it was hidden by them. The Sewergate, that 24 billion liter spill, they voted to keep it a secret from residents. And if that doesn't make you upset, breaks your heart, makes you sad, I don't know what will. And, I spent my whole life in Hamilton with a little period in Toronto because of my working life, but I'm a Hamiltonian. We are a very proud people. Maybe that's true of every city. I don't really know. But I do know that sort of, grittiness, give you shirt off your back for people in need. That's what Hamiltonians are. They want better, but they've been putting up with less. That has to stop. It's as recently as yesterday when Metrolinx and the Assistant Deputy Minister from the Ministry of Transportation spoke before our council answering their questions about why we should accept a $3.4 billion LRT gift. If that doesn't prove, some of those questions were embarrassing. They were just pathetic. And it shows the quality of our leadership, and it's not good. And that's why we're up in arms, if you will. I mean, this isn't storming the Bastille, as it were, but it's close enough in terms of the psyche involved in that. We need the change, and we've got to make it happen.
I'm going to quickly add sort of two related questions on that. One, how did this come to be? Why? And I kind of know the answer in some regards, in that you can look at a lot of cities where councillors just don't get unelected once they've been elected. And that's a problem with kind of the way our municipal politics works and maybe media coverage and things like that. But how did this come to be? And how do we encourage better people to come forward to run in, I guess it's next year now, isn't it? The election's coming up.
Yeah, it's October 24th of next year is the election day. May 2nd of next year is when candidates can declare. So between now and May 2nd, there is no such thing as a candidate because that category doesn't technically exist in law. So what we plan on doing, so first of all, to answer your question, how do I think this came to be? I think we had better leaders in the past, but how far back? I don't know, 40 years maybe? It's not like we don't have any good leaders at the table right now, but we don't have enough of them, and they get outvoted every time by the old guard. I think that we have a problem with a certain kind of civic myopia by councillors as well. They don't read much about urban affairs, about trends, about best practices. They don't travel. We have councillors who haven't even driven up the road to Kitchener-Waterloo to look at their LRT. And this is in the face of the largest investment by two levels of government, at least the offer of it, in the history of Hamilton. That's 175 years old. And our councillors won't get in their car or won't say, let's charter a bus and all go together to Kitchener-Waterloo. It's 45 minutes away. And they're actually doing what we are talking about doing and what a lot of Hamiltonians are pushing for, which is to build LRT. The difference between Kitchener and Hamilton is Kitchener had to put up a third of the funding from the taxpayers. We don't. And yet we're fighting it. Why? Because I think too many of our councillors rely on the paycheck, to be honest. This is the best job they've ever had. They've never made this kind of salary in their lives. In some cases, not every case, but in many cases. They also define through the job. They self-define through the job. And if you define yourself as counselor/leader and suddenly you're not, so like just step down after 35 years maybe, like give somebody else a try. I think people are afraid of, well, who are they once they're no longer a counselor? I think that's a factor. And so we get, and incumbency, of course, as you both know, it's tough to break that because, of course, we fund their advertising. All you have to do is look at community newspapers and, for that matter, mainstream media, and our councillors' faces, or many of our councillors' faces, especially the veterans, are all over them, and we pay for that. So how could an incumbent get away with that? Well, we let them. It's legal. We should change the rules, but we don't. If your face appears in ads, as far as I'm concerned, you should pay for it yourself. Don't put that on the taxpayers.
I'm an outsider looking into Hamilton, and I find that Hamilton is there's this reluctancy to change, or there's this, I guess, fear of change. Hamilton wants to hold on to its old image as this blue collar steel town. People still refer to U.S. Steel as Stelco, even though by all accounts it is not legally Stelco anymore. But that's just that's the mentality that's there. There seems to be a political class in Hamilton that wants to cultivate this nostalgia while at the same time undermining any kind of progress for the future. And why has Hamilton had this reluctancy to embrace change and to embrace the realities of the 21st century, that, you need to start talking about more modern infrastructure, more public transit, Wi-Fi in public spaces, and more green space, all these things that go into making it kind of a 21st century city. There's this huge reluctance to have this public discourse, an honest public discourse, rather it gets kind of hijacked by the naysayers to say, like we said, Hamilton can't have nice things,
right?
Because we're a steel town, whatever that means. Do you want to comment a bit on that, Graham?
Well, the thing is, I'm old enough to remember Stelco when by the way, it's Stelco again, but you're absolutely right. It was U.S. Steel for quite a number of years, but that got sold off by U.S. Steel. It's been rebranded, but it's much, much smaller than it used to be. So what do I remember our big industrial heyday in Hamilton. So back in the 60s and 70s and 80s for that matter. I worked for Stelco in the communications department back in 1975. It was my first full-time job. And at that time, Stelco, which is one company and only one in Hamilton, was 12,500 employees in Hamilton, 25,000 across the country. But then you could add to that DeFasco and Otis Elevator and Firestone and Westinghouse, and on it went. So yes, we were a blue-collar town with lots of well-paying management jobs, though, and executive jobs. All of that is gone. There is still some steelmaking. DeFasco, now ArcelorMittal, is still thriving, actually. But a lot of the industrial base is gone. But what it's been replaced with is medical research, innovation. The McMaster Innovation Park is a very impressive place. We're a cultural city, and our community is thriving. Not so much during COVID, but we have a wonderful Philharmonic Orchestra, an excellent art gallery, second only to the Art Gallery of Ontario. We have lots of big city features. We do also have, though, a small city mentality, in my opinion. And I think, unfortunately, I think that is fostered by the quality of leadership we have in the city. It's very small-minded. It's ward-specific. As I say, poorly read, poorly traveled, not open to new ideas, and desperate to get reelected. So don't rock the boat. Don't try and push new ideas. Don't try and advance the city forward. Just sell stuff that the average person can buy. And if that is your approach, nothing changes.
One of the other things that former Mayor Diani said that really I objected to was the kind of anti-intellectualism of these university elites. Well, again, it's that tall poppy thing, isn't it? It's like, how dare you get above your station? You're just a guy from Hamilton. It's so small-minded, so lacking in ambition. It's just frustrating beyond words. And related to that is of course, I feel that, and I don't know if you agree, that Hamilton is still dealing with the fallout of amalgamation, which was a long time ago now, before I even lived in Canada. So we're going back to previous century pretty much.
Yes, absolutely.
But we're dealing with this. Yesterday, Councillor Partridge was talking about $3 billion in spending for better transit. And she's talking about, well, is that going to stop my people from where I am driving downtown? Are they going to get stuck in traffic? And you're like, are you serious? Is this really the big point, and it's so incredibly parochial, I mean, almost literally at a parish level.
Yeah.
Well, the irony of that statement, though, is that Councillor Partridge is, if I'm not mistaken, Flamborough Waterdown.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Ward 15.
Right. They aren't going to Hamilton. Those people are coming down to Burlington.
Well, it's
Like
tragedy, but, yeah.
let's be honest here. Those people are not going. If they're going for amenities or quick a quick service, they are not going into downtown Hamilton. They'll go travel down Brand Street into Burlington. Like that. I mean, that's one of the problems of amalgamation, was that it was so haphazard that the people who are served by Burlington Moore were lumped in with Hamilton.
Yeah, I mean, the amalgamation is still, a festering wound, unfortunately. I don't know quite why that's the case, but I know it isn't helped by our current councillors. They feed it every day. It almost like it works in their favor. There's them and us, and I'll protect you. And, if I wasn't here, you know what they'd do. If you think your taxes are high now, these Hamilton bandits will be all over you. Now, not everybody feels that way, and not everybody feels that way in Waterdown or Ancaster or Stony Creek or Binbrook. They don't feel that way. They understand big city thinking. Amalgamation isn't going to be undone. It is what it is. I think what some of us are offended by is the parochialism that you talked about, Joel. It's very selfish because there are, for example, if you live in the old city of Hamilton, in the lower city of Hamilton, that's where the LRT line is going to go. If you live up on the so-called mountain in Hamilton, which is where I grew up as a kid, the Lincoln Alexander Parkway, or the Link, travels basically the same length as the LRT will. Well, I never use the Link. I don't need to use it, but I don't mind the fact that it's there. It has to be operated and maintained, just like LRT is going to have to be operated and maintained. Same with the Red Hill. I never use the Red Hill, but what I don't do, which some councillors really push, is how will my residents benefit from LRT? They'll never use it. Well, okay, maybe they won't, but a lot of Hamiltonians will. The tax base will increase significantly, which will help all Hamiltonians, not just some. So what I don't understand, and Judy Partridge, of all people, I mean, she's been pushing this, the Waterdown bypass, which is, this is not a $300,000 project. It's not going to help me or, probably a couple 100,000 people in Hamilton, but we're not fighting it. It has to be good for everybody. LRT is the first part of the blast network, but you got to start somewhere. And when the feds and the province say, we'll give you $3.4 billion to kickstart this thing, I say, where do we sign? Of course, you got to ask some questions. I'm a retired business person. I understand you got to ask some financial questions. But I'll tell you this, operating and maintenance of the gift of LRT, well, good managers will figure that out. We'll figure out how we cover those costs, because there is revenue after all. And these councillors never talk about revenue. They only talk about costs because they're trying to scare people.
What I mean, when you get into it, what you're talking about, there's building it's a massive infrastructure project that is in the downtown core. But I mean, it's the primary route as it is right now is to be going along Barton Street, which, if I'm not mistaken,
along King Street, actually.
My apologies. But I mean, that section is meant to be, it's targeted as like an economic revival by the city. They've kind of been going around different neighborhoods to revitalize rundown neighborhoods in the city, as a proper city council should. I don't get why the compartmentalizing or this I got to protect my fief, this fiefdom mentality to the city has taken root. Because I mean, you're right. I can see the benefits. If you put in LRT, you're going to get more businesses, and how that benefits people on the mountain is you might live on the mountain, but you travel downtown to go to a new job in a shiny, hopefully a shiny new office building on King Street or somewhere close by. Like, why is that argument not being made by the proponents? Those in favor of LRT. I know you are, but I don't hear from municipal leaders saying we need this to jumpstart our downtown to make it attractive, not just to us but to other people.
Well, some are. Ward 1 Councillor Maureen Wilson, Ward 2 Councillor, Ward 3, John Paul Danko, who is on the mountain. They're all speaking out in favor of this and trying to explain why. The economic uplift, the infrastructure replacement. But then we have the naysayers. Why are they saying this? I don't know. I don't know. If we were a thriving city and celebrated ourselves as such, you're absolutely right. Of course, people would go, quote, downtown, either to work or to go to a concert or to a club or to a great restaurant. We have a thriving restaurant scene in Hamilton, at least we did prior to COVID. I hope a lot of them survive, but I don't know. Just like every big city. I think probably the biggest thing psychologically for us is we've lived in the shadow of Toronto. We're so close to Toronto. Winnipeg doesn't suffer from the kinds of attitudes that we have, and we're a bigger city than they are. But they're not 10 minutes away, not literally, but they're not an hour away from, Canada's biggest city. And we are, and that's a problem. And there's always been a chip on our shoulder. Again, I speak to you as a 67-year-old Hamiltonian. So I've been around for a while and I've seen this. But this is though precisely why iElect came into being, is to fight this, is to change this, is to not just lament, these leaders are so crummy, or, maybe they should step down, let's give somebody else a chance. Now what we're saying is, okay, we're going to do something. We're going to inform voters, we're going to help them understand the issues. We are going to say to them that the only way for change is to do change, is to actually change faces.
There was one thing that you just mentioned, Graham, that I want to touch upon, because I think it goes to the heart of kind of what this podcast was originally created for. When you say that, there are folks in Hamilton who live in the shadow of Toronto. And
they did, certainly.
Well, they did. But I would make the argument that the entire 905 kind of lived in the shadow of Toronto. We live in Burlington. Roland and I live in Burlington. Everything, whenever we talk about any development, somebody always stands up to the microphone and says, why do we have to look like Toronto? And I'm sure the argument is made in certain corners of Hamilton as well. And my question to those is, nobody wants to look like Toronto. Toronto is Toronto. Let them be Toronto. We are something different. We're the 905 is a different entity, and it's in a different neighborhood, a different thing altogether. Why can't we decide to be something different? And that's something that's never been actually answered, at least to my satisfaction.
Well, I mean, I lived in Toronto for 25 years, grew up in Hamilton, left in 1980, came back in 2005 after I sold my business. I love Hamilton. I like living in Hamilton. I prefer living in Hamilton. And, like lots of people, I travel. I've traveled all over the world. I've seen other places. I like to read about other places. I'm interested. And so I pay attention to that sort of stuff. I'm inquisitive. But I love Hamilton for what it is and what it can be. It breaks my heart, picking up on a phrase you used earlier, broken heart. It breaks my heart to see us not optimize our potential. This is not a pipe dream. It's right in front of us. We're living some of these changes and these successes. We see them. We have young entrepreneurs who are changing the face of Hamilton. We are proud of our museums, our art gallery, our music scene, our fabulous. I used to sit on the board of the Hamilton Philharmonic Orchestra. We have big city features, and yet we have small town thinkers around the council table, and that's what we need to change, in my opinion. And we also need a mayor who doesn't just drone on about stuff, but actually champions and is capable of championing. And that's part of iElect as well, is having the kind of leadership. And I understand the mayor gets one vote, but the mayor is the only one who got elected by every person in the city of Hamilton. And so there is a bit of a bully pulpit that comes with the territory, and it's not being used by our current mayor. So the potential is there. There's evidence that we've got it. We're good at this. We actually know how to do interesting things. And we keep getting beat down, in my opinion, and obviously in the opinion of many others, by our elected leaders. And yet we keep voting them back in. So if iElect is successful, that will change. And certainly we're going to do our best to make that the case.
How do you hope to do that? I mean, is this going to be through like advertising, through social media campaigns, through, you say you're not going to endorse candidates and, run a specific platform and so on. And to an extent, you'd be perfectly within your rights to do so. I mean, ironically, people always throw this up as something bad. And it's like, well, actually, that's legal. That's right. Totally acceptable within the rules of democracy to do that. That's However, right. you're not going to do that. And that's a legitimate choice too. But what's the plan to kind of bring this to as many eyes as possible before Election Day?
Well, I think the biggest tool we have is information. We are going to be doing council report cards. How have they voted on key issues within each of the 6 priority areas that we've identified that spell iElect? We're going to be using information about issues, informing people about issues. The method that we're using, of course, is it's web-based. There's social media. There's mainstream media. We've had some very good coverage. We're doing advertising. We had a full-page ad. The day we launched, we had a full-page color ad in the Hamilton Spectator. There's more to come. There's radio and television advertising as well. There'll be flyers going to homes. Remember, we've been at this for 11 days. And we have, over a year ahead of us of activities and plans, and we have lots of them already identified. But you don't throw everything out there in the first 2 weeks. That's how we're going to do it. We believe that if we can better inform voters so that even in the 6 priority areas, whoever comes to their door, whether it's their incumbent or 3 new candidates, they could ask them questions about infrastructure and the economy and leadership and the environment and community and transportation. We're giving them a framework to view how their lives are being led. And so we want to inform.
That's it for part 1 of this interview. Make sure you tune in for Thursday for our usual Thursday episode, and then again next week for more on events in Hamilton and the campaign to make sure we get the best possible candidates we can running for the 2022 election. You can find out more about iElect Hamilton at iElectHamilton.ca. Thanks for now, and we'll speak to you soon.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.